I went to a pretty good school. I had a good school, and I had a good education, but it was an all-black school. Park High School, you probably know, over on 8th Avenue. I finished there in 58. In 58, of course, it was nobody but black people there, you know. And everything was still, segregation was still everywhere. And we had to have secondhand books, you know, books that maybe the white kids got tired of. They got them some new books, and then they gave us the old books. You know, it was just a way of life that I think black people in the olden days that had just accepted because it had gone on so long. We were taught history, but we were not taught any black history per se. We were not taught that in school because we didn't make the determination of what type of books we read or was taught out of. They was given to us, and they was provided for by the city Board of Education, who was all lily white. The white men did not want people to know that there were great, smart, generous, good black people. They wanted everybody to think that everybody was low class, dumb, ignorant, whatever word you want to call it, which they called us all them names, to our face, behind our back, to make sure that they tried to keep us in our place, per se. You're nothing, you're never going to be anything, you're dumb, you're not as smart as we are, you're not going to be able to go to college, you're not going to be able to do none of these great things, because that's what white people are. They're much smarter, they're more beautiful, they're better, smarter.
I asked about why are there different stuff for black folks and white folks? And why is it that the school buildings are different for white kids than black kids? And why we get school books with torn pages? And how come when you open up the school book, there are no images of black folks? You had Dick, Jane, Sally, Spot, and Puff, and that was it. No Dales, no Kens. That's what I was looking for. And when she ran out of things to say, she would always say, Dale, if you want to overcome this issue of race, you need to pray, have faith, walk upright, get a good education. That was her mantra. And she was consistent with it. I was impressed by it because I still remember it, and I'm 71 years old. Pray, have faith, walk upright, get a good education. So by them being all educators, I had a very good experience in school. We had very hardworking, smart, well-educated teachers that made sure that we were well prepared to move on to the next level if that's what we desired to do. By the time I was 12, I'd probably been on at least 6 or 7 college campuses, all HBCUs. And I knew that I was going to college when I was 12. And I was very proud of that. My mom was a school teacher. My best friend, my Aunt Ruth, at one point was the only black typing teacher in the whole state. Black folks would send their kids to Parker High School during the summer to take typing from her, because she was known throughout the area. And I admired that about her, because she worked hard, and they put a good work ethic in me that I still practice even though I'm retired.
I attended a wonderful elementary school, Center Street Elementary School, and it sat in the hub of the community. And the teachers there, I felt, were superb. We never ran. We had what we call supplies during that time. You paid your $2 fees, and if kids didn't have books, paper and pens and things like that, or pencils, the school was very helpful in getting that for you. If you came to school and you didn't have lunch money or you didn't have anything, people took you in and you were able to get everything that you needed. So we never had a problem with saying we didn't have books. We had books. Some of the books might have been written in and marked up and stuff like that, but we didn't know the difference because we had nothing to compare it with. I was taught art, I was taught music, I was taught literature, I went to the children's theater. We had a wonderful teacher. Mrs. Harriet Cantaloupe was vitally important to us. I mean, she taught us the symphony, she taught us Brahms, she taught us Mozart. We learned all those things in school. So we had no difference. And my art teacher was wonderful. You know, my English teachers and all my teachers were great. They actually took us and made us learn. It was a learning experience. I mean, I enjoyed it. I really did. I thought the teachers were superb. They were a little hard, but they were great. You know, they made us learn, and they prepared us for the world. I didn't learn anything in high school. I want you to know that. Everything I learned was in elementary school because they prepared me so well. I learned some things, of course I did, but basically all my knowledge came from that school. That was a wonderful school. And this is the same school that Denise McNair attended that school as well. Her mother was one of my teachers, and I have very fond memories of her as well. They taught us so much, you know, about abstract art, about geography, you know, about history, about science. You know, we were prepared. We were studying algebra and stuff like that when kids were not doing stuff like that. Those of us who attended Center Street still talk about Center Street. Most of us will always be lifelong friends. We have a Center Street School Facebook page. We even talked about a reunion, but now the school has been turned into, it's another school now. But we've talked about a plaque that we would like to have to present. And we were trying to get it before a lot of the teachers had passed away, but a lot of them have passed away. I mean, and they produced some very prominent citizens in this school, in this city. You know, a lot of our judges were attendees of Center Street School. Some of our doctors were attendees of Center Street School. Our council people were Titusville people, you know, from Center Street Schools. Look, Condoleezza Rice is from the same one. I mean, you know, she grew up in Titusville, you know, till her family moved away. Center Street was one of the schools. There was another school in the neighborhood. It was called Washington Elementary School. And they were very good as well. You know, I can't take away from them. The difference was 6th Avenue. Kids that lived on the other side attended that school. And kids who lived on my side attended that school. And kids who lived near Elmwood attended West Center Street until West Center Street closed, and then Center Street, then those kids on the south side, on South Titusville, attended Center Street, and those on the north side of Titusville attended Washington Elementary School. So that was the difference. There was never a competition saying you go to Washington, Center Street is better. We just knew they were different because of the location.
We were taught to achieve. All of our school teachers said the same thing, and of course they were role models themselves. And a great many of them, my teachers were actually young and probably had graduated college and became into the profession 3 and 4 years when they were teaching me at Ullman High School. I remember Miss Odessa Woolfolk, Dr. Woolfolk. She was a newly graduate from college when she came back to Ullman to teach. Same thing with Mrs. Horn. Same thing. She was a young person right out of college, really, 2-3 years at the most, when they came back to Ullman and taught us. And so we had good role models, and they encouraged us in that regard.
In our schools, we learned in history. In Ullman High School, I had excellent teachers. One of my best memorable teachers was Mr. Charles Wiggins. He taught government, and that just gave me a yearning to learn. And my husband teaches me now, and I'm a news junkie, he says, because I like to be aware of what's going on. What does the government say? What does the law say? All of these things. So Mr. Wiggins just planted a seed of curiosity and learning, in my heart at least, yes.
I went to Greymount Elementary School, but there was another Greymount Elementary School that was a few blocks down past Center Street. So the name changed from Greymount to Brunetta C. Hill Elementary School, and that's where I graduated from. Luckily, we didn't have to go to the annex because annex was like a prep period. You go down there for a year after you finish elementary school, and then kind of get ready to go into with bigger kids. And they were tearing it down in '61 when I walked in the door. So I got a chance to walk in with the upper class students. But I think that Parker had some of the greatest teachers that you would ever see in your life. I've not met anyone any better. I know for a fact that Miss Reed, Miss Austin, Mr. Merriweather, Miss Phillips, Miss Allen, because I was in an accelerated class and you couldn't take what you wanted. You could take what they gave you. And mostly was trigonometry, algebras, and things like that, in preparation for if you go into school, college. Of course, I was going. So they were great. And they went out of their way. I think that they got their own books and taught us, not just use those textbooks that were given to them by the schools, because these were heavyweights. They were good, and they cared about us. Their object was for us to learn. It wasn't about like some of them now where you just, I'm just here for the check. They don't care. Or those who try to defeat you and deflate your ego by saying, well, I got mine, you get yours. Those were bad teachers. They should have never been in the system, should have been rooted out. Chances are they just knew somebody. But at Parker, like I said, we had great facilities. We were large. When I graduated from Parker, Major Brown got the trampoline for me at Parker High School. We didn't have a trampoline, but I was on the gymnastics team, and I was always jumping and doing things, flipping. And I can remember them saying on class day, Gloria gonna jump out the building, because she just keeps bouncing on the trampoline. But when I went to Tuskegee, my very first year, you take your placement test, I got exempted from everything. That's how great our teachers were. Well, I can remember my government classes, because that was about learning your preamble to your Constitution and all of your civil rights, but don't see why you're getting into civil rights and you don't have any, I never could understand that. I mean, I used to talk to other students about that. Now, I don't remember a lot of books saying about slavery, but I do remember teachers telling us about our ancestors. I never heard anybody else say that they remember seeing the textbook. We just got our knowledge from our teachers and stuff, who knew more, who went to conferences and conventions and things, and they brought that information back to the students. But we didn't have any new books. I mean, they were all old books, but same learning, I guess. I mean, when I went to calculus or at UAB, people in that class were with me. I guess they took the same calculus because I still got the same A, you see? So I just know I had great teachers. I contributed that to them. And I contributed them to being the type of people who went outside of what they had. They weren't confined to just the classroom. They found other ways to teach the students. They got books if they had to buy them themselves. And they taught from those. At Park High School, high quality education.
I was fortunate to have a mother who had fought in 1948 for the equalization of teacher salaries. I can never say that enough, given that teachers with the same educational background, black and white, were treated very differently. And she fought for that and was fired for that. And fortunately, in a county beyond out Birmingham, but was known to be such an excellent teacher that the superintendent of colored schools, Dr. Carol Hayes, hired her shortly after that, and she moved into the Birmingham school system in '49, and I was born in 1950. And so the message from my mother to me was twofold. You were born to teach, and you were born to rebel. And that is the topic of Benjamin Mays' book. So I've always enjoyed having those two messages, born to teach and born to rebel. My dad left teaching to work in the steel mill because he could make more money. But he also was always a teacher, so he would teach the young men of color after work and on lunchtime, preparing them to go and study for the GED. My mother taught school in the daytime and was expert in math and English, and then she would teach those men and some women for GED classes at night, getting them ready for the GED exam. My mother worked with people and families, getting them ready to apply for financial aid to get kids going to college for the first time. And many people came there for tutoring of all types. It was like a tutoring center, all right? And both my mom and dad were good in math, and mother in English too. And so families would send kids to the house, and it's where I began tutoring. Mother would have me helping her tutor kids at an early age. So it was an educational center. It really was. My schools were always all black, and I had some wonderful black teachers who worked really hard. None of us appreciated being given hand-me-down books from white schools. I saw my first evidence of that in the second grade when they put brown paper bags around the menu, and we were told not to peel the brown paper bag back. Well, I was always much too curious, and I did pull it back, and I did see the name of the school and knew it was white, and I went up to the teacher and I said, why do they give us their hand-me-down books? Her first response was, I told you not to peel the paper back on that book. But I was not doing anything but looking at her. Why? And I think back now, and I mean, what do you say to a child whose innocence is taken away? And she looked at me and said, the book has been used before. It's second rate, but you are a child of God. And the knowledge in the book is still good. Get the knowledge. And remember, you don't have time to be a victim. Now go sit down. And it was a powerful lesson. But when she said it, it was with such love. It was like, okay, let's get it together. This is the circumstance. Now what do? We get the knowledge. We get the knowledge. That was the point. And that's the strength of those black teachers in those schools at that time, that they had to not only experience it themselves, but to find a way to toughen us for a world that was not fair. When I think about what we were taught in the schools, the textbooks certainly didn't speak to our experiences. It was very clear that no, we didn't really matter. The truth about 19th century Alabama or America was never told as it should have been. Fortunately, this is why I say we had some amazing teachers. I'll just think of one, Mrs. Cleopatra Goree, in social studies, like Ms. Odessa Woolfolk, both as examples in the social studies and history, who supplemented what we got in the books with other academic work and messages and lessons about the truth. That was the advantage of having enlightened teachers who could understand the constraints of a school system that had books that didn't give the full story. That was the advantage of having broadly educated teachers who wanted to prepare us for a world that would be different from the world we had known. But when I think about the quality of the schools, there are teachers whom I still think about who made such a difference. Herman Whitehead in chemistry was a graduate, a young graduate teaching chemistry. What was the message? That a young black man could know chemistry and come back to our school and with confidence teach us. And similarly in mathematics, and for me as a mathematician and the others, such an amazing story. It was so important. This is why it's important to have teachers who come from your background, who can show you, I did this and so can you. Yeah. And the other part that's important, this notion of being twice as good. Make no mistake, People said it all the time. The world is not fair. It's not enough to be as good as that white boy. You must be even better. You must work even harder. And it doesn't mean that you'll get all the opportunities, but it's the only chance you have. That's the point. And you can't simply be a victim. For me, that's the message I've used with my students all the time. We know the world, and not just with students of color, but in general, the world isn't fair. No. There will be people who get ahead. Some people start on third base and they just walk in the home run and they get all the accolades. Some of us haven't even gotten to first base and people say just run. So, we learned that message that you do your best, you give it all you have, and you learn to speak truth to power. And you learn how to think critically. And in Sunday school, let me just say what's important about Sunday school and the BTU, as it was called, this Baptist Training Unit, and the Youth Fellowship, we had things to read and to discuss. And just as in reading the Bible, again, the importance of reinforcing reading and thinking and having questions and discussion. It's an amazing way of building academic skills and thinking skills and lessons about values. That's the important part. And the fact that you'd have people who had taught in the schools in the day. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, and we'd go to Sunday school class, and you'd have to have done your lesson, you read your lesson. And it was very, very reinforcing of the importance of studying and reflecting and interpreting and analyzing and then exchanging ideas with people. But being empowered to know that the church wanted to hear what you had to say. And then the practice that was most exciting at 6th Avenue Baptist that Reverend Porter always emphasized was about academic achievement. So he would have the students who had made the dean's list to stand, and everybody would get a standing ovation. Applause. We'd get applause. And then he would talk about those who'd gotten at least a 3.5, and they would get applause. And then he would say, and anyone who's gotten a 4.0, stand. And there was a Cheryl McCarthy and a Mary Kate Bush and a little Freeman Hrabowski. We'd always be the three to stand, and they'd give us a standing ovation. Oh, my God. And I could see other kids that wanting to be there, just pushing them to want to do even better, right? But I've talked with those other colleagues, and we still remember how good it felt to get that approbation, that approval from the church, that what we were doing in school mattered. It made a big difference. It really did. Very important, very important. Mr. Bell was the principal of Ullman High School. He was the brother-in-law of the principal of Parker High School. And in the old days, those were those two big schools there. Parker was the older one. We were Ullman, the other one. Parker in Smithfield, Ullman in Titusville. And we took great pride in being good students, really good students. But Mr. Bell was a mathematician and an amazing mathematician. And I've talked about his leadership many times. Mr. Bell would give a challenge to every grade. He would go in and put a problem on the board in classes that no one could solve immediately. And when you could solve that problem, in my early years, in the 9th grade, he'd give you a dime. And I wanted that dime because I wanted to buy 10 Tootsie Rolls. They cost 1 penny a piece. And I could really encourage friendships with that because people got upset because I was so upset with the math. And I wanted them to see that loving the math could get me money. And I was like a politician for math. So I'd get my 10 Tootsie Rolls. And literally, you'd solve the problem, you run up to him in the hall, and you fight out that answer, and he'd give you that dime. Oh, my God, what a feeling. By the time I was in the 11th grade, he was giving a quarter. That was in 1965. That was a lot of money. But the academic competition, it was incredible. Those were the kinds of experiences. And Mr. Bell, again, as I say, the uncle of Alma Vivian Powell. Just a really nice story, just of these connections of people. Very significant. I think about my principal. People talk about the big names and the ministers. But I think about Mr. Bell in my school because I am an educator, and what the pressure was on him when we were all suspended from school. Those of us who marched were literally suspended from school. And he didn't want to do that, but he had no choice. The school board was telling him he had to do that. But this brilliant man came up with a plan. He didn't just put us out in the night, in behind the scenes in a dark and shameful way. He brought the whole school together. And he did it in the format of the induction into the National Honor Society. How brilliant. And he had all the students there. And he gave us some words. And he had talked, he and I just connected with this math, and we had talked before about Thoreau's civil disobedience. But he gave a speech to the group, to the whole group. But sometimes you have to do something you may not want to do, but this is what is required. But people can be brave and courageous in different ways. This is what the essence of what I remember. And he called each, you talk about call their names. He called each person who had gone to jail to the stage. In the same way that people would call the names when people were inducted into the National Honor Society. And everybody got the message. And when we all got there, he said something that was so elevating that he said, here they are. And all the students and faculty gave us a standing ovation. And we just all with tears. It was to see our community telling us we did nothing wrong. And we were to be admired for what we'd done, even as they were kicking us out of school. My God, I have used that message with educators around the country, that leaders find a way to do the right thing. And that's what Mr. Bell did. The other institution, though, that may surprise people that was available to us was our public library in Titusville. There was great prestige in getting your card, your membership card, and checking out books. For me, as the child of educators, that was a big deal. It really was. And it was a nice modern library when I think about it. And we would go there. And it was such fun, a few blocks from the house, right down the street from Cundy Rice's house, for example. And was an amazing experience. It really was. It emphasized the importance of reading. And I bring that up because what we have to think about in our community was that people did know education transforms lives. And even if the world were not fair, even if we knew the world wouldn't be fair to us, we knew that, and we're told that if we work to be our best, we could fight our way through. We could figure out a way to make life better for ourselves. And that came through the reading and thinking. Yeah.
Black teachers in Birmingham up until fairly recently, when I say fairly recently, the last 50 or 60 years, did not receive the pay that white teachers received, even though black teachers put a lot into the educational basket. And by that, I mean that if you were black, you could only teach, preach, and bury. That's what we always say. And so black teachers really went after their masters. Chester and I have talked about more than once how some of our teachers pretty much had their PhDs because that was so important to them. And that was the only way they could really show who they were. And so black teachers, even with masters and PhDs, did not make the income that white teachers in Birmingham made who barely had a BA or a BS. And so that reminds me once again of the quality of our teachers, that they invested so much in their own personal and professional development, and we, the black children, were the recipients of that. Let's go to a place where black parents felt so strongly about education that they actually organized Parker High School inside 16th Street Baptist Church. That Wallace Rayfield, the only second black architect in the U.S., taught at Parker High School. We had the very best in terms of the resources that were available to us. I did not know, as I moved through the rest of my life, all of these years as I look back, that the seeds were being planted to do and think in different ways. My teachers were more than teachers. They were blooming writers. They were theater people. They were dancing, but all they could do was what they did in their classroom. I was the beneficiary of that. That was one of the most liberating things, that as a black woman, as an African American woman, I could stand on my own and say, when you say that N-word, you're not talking to me. I don't know who you're talking to, but it's not me. I'm well prepared. I have been nurtured, and I have been loved, and I have been taught so well. I talked about Parker High School and how proud people were of Parker. At the same time, that was not putting blinders on and pretending that our situation was equal in terms of facilities and books and band uniforms and band instruments. You know, one of the great quotes of black culture is making a way out of no way. Our teachers did that. Mr. Johnson, we call him Big Red Johnson. He was Colin Powell's father-in-law. We call him Big Red Johnson because he could have passed for white. We had a number of teachers who could easily have passed for white, and they did. So Mrs. Chambliss, who taught music at Lincoln Elementary School, we all kind of knew if we saw her in a certain place, like downtown, Old Forbes Music Store, when you go in to try out instruments or look at the sheet music or what have you, if we were little children and we saw her downtown, we didn't know Miss Chambliss. We couldn't blow her cover, because we also knew that Mrs. Chambliss would take her access looking the way she looked, and she would get things for us that otherwise we wouldn't have had, you know. Certain arrangements, certain sheet music, certain music books, whatever was to be given was accessible, Mrs. Chambliss would find a way to do that. So we knew that about her. Mrs. Chambliss was also one of the people who had every spring recital there at the church. One of her students, by the way, was Angela Davis, who was and is quite a pianist. I can remember her playing Rachmaninoff and things like that. Our teachers made a way out of no way. So Parker High School, which began at 16th Street Baptist Church, had all of the things that you would say a Booker T. Washington would have had at Tuskegee: tailoring, you know, woodwork, electrical work, whatever the shop things were. When you left Parker High School and you graduated, you were pretty much on the road to, if you wanted to set up your own business, your own cafe, your own catering, your own print shop, your own this or that. Musicians were well known at Parker High School. They say that bands like Duke Ellington and Count Basie, they would come to Birmingham and they would recruit players for Birmingham because there was a man named Fess Whatley. Fess Whatley was legendary. When I got to Parker, he was teaching in the print shop, but he was an old man, a wiry old man, high-five, and the band room was like above his shop. And we'd be up there, you know, doing our music and stuff, practicing all of the marches and stuff for the games or what have you. And he would come flying up the steps because he heard some trumpet player not on key, and he would run right to that player. And sure enough, it would be that player who was off key. So we had people like that around us a lot. I was always impressed. We always had assemblies because Parker was so big. We had assemblies on Thursday and Friday. And as a rule, it was the same program. So if you had the induction of the Honor Society Thursday, you had it on Friday. You had the Christmas program, you did it on Thursday. So it like repeat itself. So I was in the choir. I accompanied the choir at Parker. And the teacher was William Henry, just loved and beloved, just a real genius, one of the early Fisk Jubilee singers. I was always impressed after assemblies at Parker that when I got back to, so classes begin after that. When you get to class, it didn't matter, Mr. Howes, Miss whoever, Mrs. Barrett, whoever the teachers were, would say to you, "Oh, I like that Lawrence Thompson arrangement you did." And I would say, "How do you know about that?" "Well, I sang that." I was impressed that so many of our teachers were multi-talented. Yeah, they taught English, but they could dance, they could choreograph, they could do this, they could do that. And that's what I mean about a rich culture where our teachers never had a chance to really show who they were. But once again, we, the children, are the beneficiaries of that. If they couldn't show it, if the doors were closed in their faces, then they went out of their way to prepare their students for not just when the doors open, but knock down some doors.
I don't remember anything about African American history. And we had Alabama history, but that didn't come out the textbooks. It's like those things were kept away from us, like it wasn't important. And I know Black people have made significance, big significance in history. A lot of inventions and things of that nature. Even though sometimes the Black person invented it, they didn't get the credit. History is history. You can't say that it didn't exist. It did. If you want to say it didn't exist, then we don't exist. The United States, the world don't exist if you want to say a certain part didn't happen, because that led up to everything else. Kids need to know what happened. So I went through the Board of Education, and we got okay to teach Black history for 6 weeks at different schools. And the kids were just amazed or dumbfounded as to why we don't know this. We got clips from the marches, and they cried. I actually have letters, because when my 6 weeks was up teaching about what happened in Birmingham, I said, just write me a sentence of what this meant to you. I cried. I went to my car and I cried. My husband was there also helping me teach. And I kept those letters. I sent some to Ann, because they want to know why we don't know, why nobody told us this. So it's so important that this doesn't stop here. It needs to go on from generation to generation, because it's history, and you cannot erase history. I remember once we had a meeting, and I can't remember what guy it was, but he was white. But he was in the meeting, and he said, "Oh, why wouldn't you just let bygones be bygones?" He's like, "Oh no, we can't sweep this under the rug. This got to go out." That happened. And I couldn't believe that someone actually had the nerve to say that in the setting that we were in, trying to bring about harmony, trying to feel each other's pain, because I can only speak how a Black person felt. I don't know how a white person felt. But going to some of the schools and speaking in the auditorium, people actually came up to me and apologized. White people, they cried. They couldn't believe how we were treated.
I was hired in 1968, and I taught science at Hudson Elementary. It was one of the largest elementary schools in the city system. I had 12 classes, 6th, 7th grade, 8th grade, and science was my subject. Some of the kids came 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Some kids came Tuesdays and Thursdays. I always wanted to be a teacher, so I was happy with my assignment. The next year, I was called into the board with some other teachers, and we were told that we were chosen to go into all white schools because they wanted the parents and administrators to know that we knew how to teach. And the school that I was sent to was McElwain. And I had 4 classes, 2 7th grade, 2 8th grade classes. And they came back in the afternoon for enrichment. And at Hudson School, I didn't have a microscope, I didn't have a test tube, I didn't have anything. I would go to Miles College, where I graduated, and borrow equipment and things to show or to use as demonstrations. I went to McElwain, and I had a closet full of stuff. And I was told by the PTA, if there's something you want that you don't see, let us know, we'll get it for you. I was just amazed at the difference. I remember even on my schedule at Hudson School, during the time that I didn't have a class, I had to monitor the hall during my lunch period. So I didn't have any duty-free time at all. The next year I go to McElwain, I got a 30-minute duty-free period where I can do grade papers or whatever. Lunch, the teacher sat at a certain table, and we had extra things at our table. It was like night and day. I even heard that our salaries were different. What we were paid in the black schools and what that same level of preparation was paid in the white schools were different. It was like we had a dual system. When I first went to McElwain, there were some teachers who were, a little cool, and that was fine with me. I had parents initially who would come and sit in my class. I didn't like that, and I spoke to the principal about it, and he did nothing about it. So after a couple of weeks of that, I started treating them like they were students. And I would call on Mrs. Jones to go to the board and do so and so, and they stopped coming. The kids were receptive. There were 1 or 2 that had some issues, and you could tell that it was born at home. But 99% of the kids that I encountered, they were kids, and they did not present a problem. And the parents came on board as well. Most of the teachers. There was only 1 teacher that I felt had an issue with my presence, but everybody else became a part of the family, basically. In fact, I had 2 who became very good friends. They attended my wedding. The next year or so, this young guy comes to our school as principal. His name was Jack Mann, and he was everybody's friend. We loved him. I endeared him. He sang at my wedding. He was just such a great people person and a great support. I will never forget it. I think my opportunity to teach in an all-white school showed me some things that I might not have known otherwise. That people are just people, and there are good people and bad people in all races and in all economic range. And it gave me an opportunity to see a more worldwide view of people. So I'm grateful for that opportunity to have had that exposure.